Welcome to ETUK Investigates. Okay, stop what you are doing. Seriously. Pull over the car, put down the coffee, and listen. Right now, it is Friday, January 30, 2026. The doomsday clock isn't ticking anymore. It's screaming. It is officially at 89 seconds to midnight.
89 seconds.
That is the closest we have ever been to the end of the world. And I know we hear doom every other week on the news, but this just feels different.
It feels different because for the first time in a long time, the clock isn't moving based on metaphors or, climate change models or some vague existential dread. We aren't talking about awareness.
Yeah.
We are tracking the physical movement of steel, the geopolitical architecture that held the world together, more or less, for the last 80 years. It is buckling right now, today.
And I want you to just visualize the scale of this for a second. We are not talking about diplomatic tensions. We aren't talking about a sternly worded letter from the UN or some, sanctions package that no one pays attention to. We are talking about an armada, the USS Abraham Lincoln, Destroyer Squadron 21. And just now, we're getting confirmation the USS George H.W. Bush is leaving Norfolk. This is millions of tons of American naval power converging on one single choke point.
And if you look at the intel coming out of Tehran, the rhetoric has shifted completely. It's a night and day difference from even a month ago. They aren't calling this a deployment. They are not calling it a show of force.
What are they calling it?
In their internal communications, they're calling it the end.
The end. Wow. Okay. So here is the mission for this deep dive. We have spent the last 48 hours just buried in data, cross-referencing satellite imagery. We've got leaked naval logs, and we've even got some internal Iranian intelligence reports that, frankly, they paint a terrifying picture. We are going to find out if we are quite literally sleepwalking into World War III.
And maybe even more importantly, we're going to expose why the 12-day war that happened last June, which everyone thought was the climax, the big event, wasn't the finale at all.
Not even close.
It's just the opening act.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because the first thing we really need to look at is the anomaly, the carrier gap. And honestly, when I first saw this data point in the logs, I thought it was a typo. I thought it had to be a clerical error.
It wasn't an error. It's the piece of the puzzle that the mainstream news kind of just glossed over because, let's be honest, it's boring logistics. But in the intelligence world, logistics is everything. It tells you the real story.
So on January 26, 2026, that was just a few days ago, the USS Abraham Lincoln officially entered the Central Command region. That's the Middle East theater for anyone not up on the lingo. But before that, this is the crazy part. For 20 days, there was nothing.
Nothing. A total void, no U.S. carrier in the region.
Which is a massive glitch in the pattern. It breaks all the rules.
It does. You have to understand U.S. naval doctrine. For decades, the policy has been 1.0 carrier presence. That means there's always one carrier strike group in the Persian Gulf or the North Arabian Sea. Always.
It's the beat cop.
It's the beat cop. It's the police car parked on the corner to make sure the neighborhood stays quiet. It's a visible symbol of American power and commitment.
And suddenly, the cop car just drives away. For 3 weeks, the whole neighborhood is just left empty.
Exactly. Now, the official line from the Pentagon was maintenance issues. They said the Harry S. Truman, which was supposed to be there, had reactor complex issues and had to divert to Spain.
Right, I remember that story. It didn't get much play.
It didn't, because it sounds plausible on the surface. But when you look at the timing of it, to leave the most volatile region on Earth completely empty of capital ships for 20 days, right as tensions are spiking to an all-time high?
It feels intentional. It feels like they were setting a trap.
See, I disagree with the trap theory. I know that's the exciting movie plot version, but I'm looking at it like a strategist. I don't think they pulled the carrier to trick Iran into attacking something.
Then why? Why do it?
I think it was what they call a tactical reset.
A tactical reset. That sounds like corporate speak for we messed up.
No. Think about it from a military perspective. If you keep a carrier on station for 9-10 months, the crew is exhausted. The jets are wearing out. Their airframes are stressed. The ship's reactors need flushing. By pulling everything out, you create a vacuum. You create silence.
Okay.
And in that silence, you watch what the adversary does. You see how they move their pieces on the board when they think you aren't looking. You recalibrate your intelligence. And then you surge back in. Not with a tired, worn-out crew, but with fresh steel, with fully stocked magazines.
So it's like a deep breath before the scream.
Precisely. And now that the Lincoln is back, Look at how it came back. It didn't come alone, and it didn't come back with the standard patrol configuration. The specific ships and aircraft with it, that configuration tells us exactly what they're planning for.
Oh, the tech specs on this are absolutely wild. We need to geek out on the hardware for a second because it tells the story better than any Pentagon press release ever could. The Lincoln is accompanied by the USS Spruance, the USS Michael Murphy, and the USS Frankie Peterson Jr.
These are not just any destroyers. They're Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. And specifically, they are the later Flight IIA ships, all equipped with the Aegis Baseline 9 combat system. That's the key detail.
Okay, so for those who don't speak Navy, and that's most of us, Aegis is the shield.
Right.
It's the thing that shoots down missiles.
It's so much more than a shield. It's a distributed brain. Think of it like a computer network. The Aegis system and all these ships and the carrier itself, and even the E-2D Hawkeye planes flying above, it connects them all together.
So the Spruance might see a target over the horizon that the Lincoln can't see.
And it can use its radar data to guide a missile fired from the Michael Murphy to hit that target. It creates this seamless 360-degree kill web around the carrier. It's not 4 separate ships. It's one integrated weapon system.
A kill web. And these ships, they are designed to track and destroy hundreds of targets simultaneously. Ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, enemy fighters. They are there to just swat missiles out of the sky like flies.
Which implies one very, very important thing.
That the U.S. expects a lot of missiles.
A lot of missiles. You don't deploy that level of defensive density that many high-end destroyers crowded around the carrier unless you are anticipating a saturation attack.
A saturation attack, that means?
It means the enemy fires more missiles than you have interceptors. It's a brutal, simple math problem. If the Lincoln Strike Group can shoot down, say, 100 incoming missiles in a single wave, Iran's plan is to fire 150. That's the nightmare scenario.
And then there's the air wing. It's not just the standard F-18s. We're talking a full complement of F-75C Lightning II, the stealth fighters, and crucially, the EA-18G Growlers. The Growlers are the key here. I've been reading up on these things. They don't really carry bombs, do they?
They can carry missiles for self-defense, some anti-radiation missiles, but their primary weapon is electrons. The Growler is a dedicated electronic warfare platform. Its job is to fly into enemy airspace and just scream electronically. It jams their radars, it jams their radio frequencies, it hacks their networks from the air.
It creates a fog of war. So the enemy operators on the ground, they can't see their own screens. Their missiles can't find a target.
It's designed to blind the enemy, to shut down their entire air defense network, jam their communications, and basically turn their multi-billion-dollar defense systems into expensive paperweights.
So you have the stealth fighters to be the invisible punch, and the Growlers to make sure the enemy is blind and can't punch back.
This is not a peacekeeping force. A peacekeeping force brings capability to monitor and observe. This is a door-kicking force. They are there to blind the enemy and then systematically dismantle them.
But wait, here is where it gets really, really interesting. We found a reference in the source material to something called MEAD-CDOC. Have you heard of this before? It sounds like an anagram.
Yes, the Middle Eastern Air Defense Combined Defense Operations Cell. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's probably the most important military facility in the entire region that nobody talks about. It's based at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. MEAD-CDOC. So it's basically the nerve center for the entire region's air defense, not just the carrier group.
Think of it as the conductor of a vast continent-spanning orchestra. But the instruments are Patriot missile batteries in Saudi Arabia, the aid systems in the UAE, the Aegis destroyers in the Gulf, and a whole constellation of spy satellites in orbit.
So if Iran launches a ballistic missile,
the second it clears the launch pad, a satellite sees the heat bloom. It sends that data instantly to MEAD-CDOC. The supercomputers there calculate the missile's trajectory in milliseconds and decide which asset, which ship, or which land-based battery is in the best possible position to take the shot.
It integrates everything. The Israelis, the Saudis, the Americans, all their shields are controlled from one room.
It has to.
Yeah.
Because the threat scenario that this entire system was designed to defeat is known as the missile ring. That is the specific term used in the war games.
The missile ring.
Iran has the largest and most diverse arsenal of ballistic missiles in the Middle East. Thousands of them. If they launch them all at once, a coordinated salvo of 500 or 1,000 missiles targeting cities, bases, and ships across the region, no single ship or battery can handle that. You need a computer brain that can coordinate the defense of an entire continent in real time.
And the fact that they are activating MEAD-CDOC, putting it on its highest alert status?
It means the U.S. is signaling that it expects the rain to fall. You don't turn on that kind of computing power and integrate all those international partners for a drill. You do it when you think the war is hours away.
So the shield is up, the Lincoln is there, the brain in Qatar is online and humming, but the other guy isn't just sitting there waiting to get hit. Let's talk about the counter move, because Tehran has been extremely busy.
Extremely busy. And I think there is this dangerous stereotype in the West that the Iranian military is just guys in pickup trucks with old AK-47s. That is a fatal level of complacency.
No, not anymore. We are seeing these detailed reports about the islands of the Strait, Greater Tum, Lesser Tum, Abu Musa. These are 3 tiny, strategically vital islands right in the mouth of the Persian Gulf.
They sit right in the middle of the shipping lane. If you control those islands, you control the jugular vein of the entire world economy. 20% of the world's oil flows right past them.
And the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has turned them into fortresses. We're talking underground bunkers, anti-ship missile silos, and this new radar system we found mentioned in the intel, the Belarusian Vostok 1.
The Vostok 1. Okay, this is a big deal. This is a real game changer.
Why? Why is a Belarusian radar on a tiny Iranian island such a problem for the most advanced air force in the world?
Because of physics. It's all about the wavelength. Most modern targeting radars, the ones that guide missiles to a target, operate on the X-band frequency. It's very precise. American stealth fighters, like the F-35, are shaped and coated with special materials specifically to be invisible to X-band radar. They deflect or absorb those waves.
It's their cloak of invisibility, basically.
Against X-band, yes. But the Vostok 1 is different. It's a much older design concept, and it operates on the VHF band. Very high frequency. The wavelength is much longer, meters long. It's clunky. It's not precise enough to guide a missile to a specific hit. But
it's excellent for detecting that something is there.
It can see the ghost. The long waves of the VHF radar can get a return off the F-35's tail fins or cockpit. It won't give them a perfect target lock, but it can tell the Iranian commanders, hey, there's a formation of stealth aircraft coming from the south at this altitude and this speed. It strips away the single most important advantage the F-35 has, the element of surprise.
That is huge. They're specifically hunting the stealth. They've found a counter.
Theoretically is the key word here, but the intent is crystal clear. General Mohammad Pakpour, he's the commander of the IRGC ground forces, said explicitly in a speech last week that their finger's on the trigger. This isn't just rhetoric anymore. It's a documented doctrine shift to what they call proactive defense.
And usually that's just bluster, right? Just angry talk for the domestic audience to look tough. But when you look at the physical deployment of the Vostok 1, and then you look at the swarm tactics they're rehearsing, it looks very real.
The swarm is the asymmetric nightmare. This is the thing that keeps U.S. Navy admirals awake at night.
Okay, picture this. You have the USS Abraham Lincoln. It costs $13 billion. It has 5,000 sailors on board. It is the most powerful warship in the history of the world. It's a floating airport, a symbol of a superpower. And facing it, a swarm of hundreds of tiny, fast-attack speedboats.
Armed with cheap cruise missiles, armed with kamikaze drones, and some of them just packed with explosives, rigged for suicide attacks.
It sounds suicidal, doesn't it? Taking a little fiberglass speedboat against a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, it sounds like something from a bad action movie.
But it's not about courage or being suicidal. It's about the math. War, at its core, is accounting. Is a cold, hard cost-benefit analysis.
Okay, break down the math for me.
Okay. An SM-6 interceptor missile, that's the primary defensive missile the U.S. destroyers use to shoot things down, costs about $4 million per shot.
$4 million?
Wow. A cheap Iranian kamikaze drone costs maybe $20,000. A fast attack boat, fully armed, costs maybe $200,000.
So you're firing a Ferrari to shoot down a tricycle.
Exactly. And you have a limited number of Ferraris in the magazine. A destroyer might have 90 missile cells. If you throw 1,000 cheap threats at a $13 billion capital ship, you drain the ship's magazines. And once the magazines are empty, the ship is a floating, defenseless target.
You only need 1 or 2 of those cheap missiles to get through.
Just 1 or 2. You only need 1 to get through to cause a catastrophic mission kill.
A mission kill meaning the flight deck is wrecked, the catapults are broken, and the multi-billion-dollar jets can't take off.
Right. You don't have to sink the Lincoln to win the battle. You just have to burn the flight deck. If the F-35s can't launch, the carrier is just a floating hotel with a really big target painted on it.
And it's not just the Iranian Navy doing this, it's the entire axis of resistance. We're seeing these chilling reports from Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, from the Houthis in Yemen. They're literally registering volunteer martyrs for attacks on U.S. forces.
This is a coordinated regional coalition. They're making it clear that if a war starts, they aren't just going to attack the ships in the Gulf. They're going to attack U.S. bases in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan. They are threatening a multi-front war that stretches across the entire Middle East.
So you have the Armada on one side, bristling with these high-tech shields. You have the swarm on the other side, waiting with this low-tech, brute force plan to overwhelm them. It's a standoff. But to understand why this is happening right now, why January 30, 2026 is the date on the calendar, we have to go back.
We have to stop the pacing for a second. This is important. We need to rewind the clock to June of 2025. Because if you don't understand what happened on that mountain 6 months ago, you cannot understand why we are 89 seconds from midnight today.
The 12-day war.
Right. Or as it was known inside the Pentagon, Operation Midnight Hammer.
At the time, it looked like a U.S. victory, or at least a decisive strike. June 2025. The U.S. and Israel launched this massive coordinated bombing campaign, B-2 Spirit stealth bombers flying directly from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, refueling midair over the Atlantic.
They hit Fordo, they hit Natanz. These are the crown jewels of the Iranian nuclear program, deeply buried, heavily fortified facilities.
And the headlines afterwards were triumphant, I remember them. Nuclear program set back by years, mission accomplished. It really felt like the problem was, solved, kicked down the road for a decade.
But... and here is the leak we managed to get our hands on. A classified defense intelligence agency after-action report suggests it failed.
Failed might be a strong word, but it certainly didn't achieve the total destruction that they claimed in public. Not even close.
Let's talk physics. Because the failure wasn't about courage or bad targeting, it was about geology. They used the GBU-57 MOP, the massive ordnance penetrator.
The MOP. This thing is a monster. It's a 30,000-pound bomb. It is the size of a telephone pole. It is essentially a solid steel dart filled with about 5,000 pounds of high explosives. I've seen pictures of it next to people. It looks like a grain silo with fins. It's enormous.
Right. Now, the way it works is pure kinetic energy. It doesn't explode on impact with the ground. It's dropped from 40,000 feet, and it hits the ground at supersonic speeds. It has to punch through solid granite. The GBU-57 is rated to penetrate about 200 feet of reinforced concrete, or roughly 60 meters of hard rock, before the delayed fuse finally triggers the explosion.
So it burrows deep, deep inside the mountain, then booms. The idea is to create an artificial earthquake to collapse the facility from within.
Exactly. They dropped several of these on Pickaxe Mountain, which is the nickname for the mountain range where the Fordo facility is buried.
But the intel in this DIA report says the uranium, it just wasn't there.
The most sensitive material, the highly enriched uranium hexafluoride gas, it appears it had been moved, or at least a significant portion of the most valuable, most enriched material had been moved weeks before the strike.
So they blew up the ventilation shafts, they collapsed the access tunnels, they made a huge mess. They definitely caused damage, but they didn't kill the program.
And this is the critical context for today, because the strikes didn't destroy the knowledge. They didn't destroy the centrifuges that had already been moved. They just bought time, maybe a few months, not the years they claimed.
Yeah, Now Iran is digging deeper.
We have satellite intelligence from yesterday, January 29, 2026, about a brand new site. It's called Mount Kolangazla.
Mount Kolangazla, just saying the name sounds ominous. What is happening there?
They are rebuilding, but this time they aren't building their most sensitive centrifuge halls 200 feet down. They are building them 330 feet underground.
Okay, so we see this number in the intel report, 330 feet. To the average person, that's just a really deep hole. But in the world of bunker-busting physics, 330 feet is a very specific, very frustrating number. Why that exact depth?
It's the math of the GBU-57 we just talked about. The laws of physics limit how deep that bomb can go, no matter how high you drop it from. If Iran finishes this new facility at Kolangazla and moves their material there, they enter what strategists are calling a zone of immunity.
A zone of immunity.
It means they are deep enough that our current conventional weapons, even the biggest, baddest bomb in the entire American arsenal, cannot physically reach them.
So that creates the use it or lose it timeline.
Precisely. That is why the clock is screaming. If the U.S. and Israel want to stop Iran from getting the bomb with military force, they have to strike now, before the concrete sets at the new mountain. Once that facility is operational and material is moved inside, conventional military options effectively vanish from the table.
Unless, could you drop two? one after the other in the same hole.
The two-tap. Theoretically, yes, it's been discussed. You drop one MOP to blow a massive crater, and you try to time the second MOP to fly through the explosion and debris cloud of the first one to dig even deeper.
That sounds absolutely insane. The timing would have to be perfect.
It's incredibly difficult. It's a Hail Mary. You're trying to thread a needle at supersonic speeds while the mountain itself is collapsing, filled with smoke and rock and debris. It's a desperate last-ditch measure. And the fact that we're even hearing whispers about the two-tap shows you just how desperate this situation has become.
That is just terrifying. It explains the rush. It explains the armada. It explains why the clock is at 89 seconds. But while all of us are watching the ships in the mountains, there is another war that's already happening. A silent war.
The war in the cables. The war in the servers.
Iran is currently, as of this morning, in a state of what experts are calling absolute digital isolation.
This isn't just a slow internet connection because of protests. This is a nationwide internet blackout, a total digital void. They've been severed from the global web.
They're calling it a kill switch. But it's not just censorship. It's not just the regime trying to stop kids from using Instagram to organize. This is warfare. We have to talk about a group called Predatory Sparrow.
Predatory Sparrow in Farsi. Kanjeshki Durande. Yeah. This is honestly the most fascinating and frightening evolution in modern warfare to me. Because for years, cyber warfare was silent. It was spies stealing data in the dark. Predatory Sparrow changed all the rules.
They aren't spies. They're like digital hooligans, but with the capabilities of a nation state.
They're psychological terrorists. Look at what they did to the Khuzestan steel mill last year. They didn't just shut down the mill and demand a ransom. They hacked the industrial control systems to make a ladle of molten steel pour out onto the factory floor, causing a massive, spectacular fire. But, and this is the crazy part, they hacked the facility's CCTV cameras first.
They wanted to get the video.
They wanted the video to post on Twitter. They broadcast the fire as it was happening. That isn't about destroying steel. That's about sending a message to the regime. It says, we are in your house, we are watching you, and we can burn you down whenever we want.
It reminds me of Stuxnet, but much, much louder.
Stuxnet was the grandfather of all this. That was back in 2010, the first true digital weapon. It was elegant. It was silent. It physically destroyed Iranian centrifuges by making them spin too fast while telling the monitors that everything was fine. Predatory Sparrow is the opposite. It's loud, it's messy, it's performative.
And now, in the context of this nationwide blackout, the fear is that Predatory Sparrow or similar groups are using the chaos to plant logic bombs in the power grid, in the water systems, in the air traffic control networks.
And it absolutely goes both ways. We're seeing Iranian-linked groups, APT-33, Muddy Water, targeting our systems. They've gone after water treatment plants in Pennsylvania. They've probed power grids in Texas.
This is gray zone warfare. We think of war as missiles and tanks and things that go boom, but World War III is already happening. It's being fought right now in the servers. It's happening in the code.
And the terrifying thing about cyber warfare is that the rules of escalation haven't been written yet. If you shut down a hospital's power grid in Tehran and patients on life support die, is that an act of war? Does that justify a missile strike on a base in Qatar or a city in Israel? Nobody knows.
Speaking of patients dying, we need to pivot here. We've been talking about ships and bombs and code, but we have to look at what's happening on the ground because the human cost of this crisis is already staggering.
It is. And honestly, this is the part that gets lost in the whole techno-thriller narrative.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in the cool radar systems and the stealth fighters that we forget there are real people bleeding in the streets. Since December 28, 2025, Iran has been convulsing with the most intense protests we've ever seen.
The numbers we're getting from activists on the ground are horrific. They're reporting at least 6,159 people have been killed by security forces.
6,000 people. In about a month, that is a massacre. That is Tiananmen Square levels of violence, and it's happening right now, today, while the world is distracted by the warships.
We're seeing videos of security forces firing into crowds with live ammunition. They are reportedly firing into hospitals to finish off the wounded protesters. It's a level of brutality we haven't seen since the darkest days of the 2019 protests, and maybe even worse.
And this is what's driving the political response in the West.
Yeah.
You can't just ignore that kind of slaughter. The U.S. administration is now sanctioning the specific architects of this crackdown.
We've got names: Ali Larijani, Eskandar Momeni. These aren't low-level guys.
No. Momeni is the interior minister. He's the guy in charge of the police forces and the besieged militia that are doing the killing. Larijani is the Secretary of the Supreme Council for National Security. He's one of the men moving the chess pieces for the entire regime.
By sanctioning them personally, the U.S. is trying to cut off the head of the snake. But then you have the rhetoric from former President Trump. He tweeted, "Help is on the way."
Which is an incredibly ambiguous and incredibly dangerous thing to say right now. Help is on the way. To a young protester in Tehran facing down a rifle, that sounds like hope. It sounds like the Americans are coming to save us.
To the regime in Tehran.
To the regime, that sounds like an explicit threat of invasion. It sounds like a promise of regime change.
And when a regime feels like its very survival is at stake, not just its geopolitical interests, but its actual physical survival, it becomes dangerously unpredictable.
And desperate. And desperation leads to economic chaos. Let's talk about the economic abyss. Because if the Strait of Hormuz closes, even for a day, if the strait closes, take whatever you are paying for gas right now and double it. Overnight. No, seriously, maybe triple it. The global economy would have a heart attack.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why is this one little stretch of water so disproportionately important?
The Strait of Hormuz is the world's single most critical energy choke point. There is no alternative. About 20% of the world's total oil consumption, plus a third of its liquefied natural gas, passes through that narrow channel every single day.
So if Iran mines the strait, or just threatens to shoot at any tanker that tries to pass,
the insurance rates for shipping go vertical. They become infinite. No company is going to insure a billion-dollar supertanker and its cargo to sail into a shooting gallery. So the ships stop moving instantly.
The global supply chain breaks. Oil goes to $100, maybe $150 a barrel in a matter of hours.
And that triggers an instant global recession. Inflation, which we've just gotten under control, spikes back up to double digits. Central banks panic and raise interest rates. Stock markets crash.
And we are in such a fragile moment economically. We have this massive AI bubble that everyone is privately worried about. The tech stocks are completely over-leveraged. If you combine an AI market crash with a sudden oil shock,
you are looking at a scenario where $35 trillion in global consumer wealth could be wiped out. It's the 1930s echo.
That phrase keeps coming up in the research we've been doing, the 1930s echo. What does that actually mean in this context?
It's a reference not just to the Great Depression, but to the geopolitical slide toward war that it created.
Yeah.
The core idea is that economic desperation fuels territorial revisionism. When countries are broke, when their people are angry and unemployed, their leaders start looking at maps and wanting to change the lines. It happened in the 30s with Germany, with Japan, with Italy. We are seeing the same dangerous pressures building now.
Which brings us to the broader historical parallel. We have an academic source here, a historian named Roland Branchen, who did a comparative analysis of the 1930s and today for the War College.
And it's chilling to read. He talks about the return of rigid alliances. In 1914, you had the Central Powers versus the Allies. Everyone was locked into these complex defense treaties. So one assassination in Sarajevo dragged the entire world into hell because the dominoes were all lined up.
And today, we have this new axis of resistance: Iran, Russia, China, North Korea versus the Western coalition. The lines are being drawn just as rigidly.
And just like in 1914, the mechanisms for de-escalation are broken. Branchen calls it multipolarity without multilateralism.
Can you translate that from academic speak for us?
It means we have lots of powerful countries. Again, it's not just the U.S. anymore. You have a rising China, a resurgent Russia, so you have great power competition. But we have no rules. The UN Security Council is paralyzed by vetoes. Diplomacy is dead. The arms control treaties have all expired. It's a bar fight with all the lights turned off, and everyone has a knife.
And in that bar fight, one of the guys might have a suicide vest. We have to talk about the Samson option.
This is the ultimate fear. This is what keeps the lights on in Washington and Tel Aviv 24/7, the dawn of the third nuclear era.
Explain the Samson option. Where does that term come from?
It comes from the biblical story of Samson, who was captured and blinded by his enemies, the Philistines. As a final act of revenge, he pushed apart the pillars of their temple, bringing the roof down and killing himself along with all of his enemies.
So in nuclear strategy,
it refers to a state that, when facing total military collapse and the death of its regime, decides to launch everything it has. The doctrine is, if I am going down, I'm taking the entire region down with me.
So the big question, does Iran have the bomb?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question. The latest IAEA report says they have enough highly enriched uranium for 9 bombs.
9 bombs. That's not a test device. That's a functional arsenal.
The breakout time. That's the time it would take to further enrich that uranium to weapons grade, is now considered to be 0. They're already there. The only thing missing, we think, is the final weaponization process, putting it all into a warhead that fits on a missile.
And how long does that final step take?
Estimates vary wildly. 6 months, 2 months. But if they feel the U.S. is about to invade, if they truly believe help is on the way, means their execution is imminent. Do they rush it? Do they slap a crude but functional dirty device together in a matter of weeks?
Or do they use the threat of it as the ultimate blackmail? Don't touch us, or we burn Tel Aviv and Riyadh to the ground.
That is the ultimate gamble. And that is why the carriers are there. The deployment isn't just to strike them. It's to convince them that if they even try it, the response will be so total and so devastating that there will be nothing left of their country to rule. It's deterrence.
But the diplomatic back channels, they're dead. We're hearing from sources that Qatar and Oman, the two countries that usually pass the secret notes back and forth between Washington and Tehran, are getting the cold shoulder.
Iran has stopped picking up the phone. And when you stop talking, you start signaling with hardware, you signal with missile tests, you signal with nuclear enrichment, you signal with carrier deployments. And signals, especially in a crisis, can be tragically misinterpreted.
A misinterpretation, a radar glitch, a nervous captain, an accident, that's all it takes.
They're at the absolute edge. There is no other way to describe the situation.
So let's bring it to the outro. Let's sum this up. The 48-hour warning.
We call it that because the momentum now feels self-sustaining. The pieces are moving on their own. The carriers are placed. The sanctions are set. The Iranian general says his finger is on the trigger.
We have looked at the skill, we've looked at the code, we've looked at the geology of the mountains, and we've looked at the money. And nowhere in all of this data did we find a clear, obvious off-ramp.
The probability of a peaceful exit is shrinking to zero. We are watching a train wreck in slow motion, but this time the train is carrying nuclear fuel.
History doesn't announce the moment the world changes. There's no bell that rings. It just happens. You wake up one morning and the world is at war.
We'll be watching the ticker. Good night.
This has been ETK Investigates.